Later today, President Joe Biden will sign an executive order aimed at protecting access to abortions and contraceptives nationwide. The signing is just one of several high-profile events the president and vice president are hosting to mark tomorrow's one-year anniversary of the fall of Roe v. Wade. We're here for the vice president, a major speech. The president's got an event at the Mayflower Hotel just up the road there in Washington. The executive order he's going to sign today aims to increase contraceptive options, lower out-of-pocket costs for reproductive care, and raise awareness about family planning choices. This is the third executive order Biden has signed related to reproductive health since the Supreme Court's decision in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case last year. There is no timeline for when private, state, or federal agencies must act in order to be compliant with the measure. But the White House says the executive order highlights his administration's commitment to supporting reproductive rights. The move was endorsed by three major abortion rights groups: Planned Parenthood Action Fund, NARAL Pro-Choice America, and Emily's List, which are slated to join the president and vice president at today's order signing and endorse his reelection bid. Meanwhile, new polling from NBC News shows that most voters remain opposed to the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe. In the survey, 61% say they disapprove of the decision to remove federal protections for abortion rights. That is unchanged from the poll taken last September. The new number includes not only Democrats, but also 60% of independents and almost a third of Republican voters. Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Sharice Davids of Kansas. Congresswoman, so great to see you this morning. So your home state, Kansas, was at the center of the post-Roe conversation last year. That state, of course, went for Donald Trump pretty convincingly, but then voted to codify abortion rights into the state constitution. So just a year out, tell us what this moment is, both for the state of Kansas, but also the nation.
Yeah. Well, good morning. And, you know, I think that right now what we're seeing is continued fear and anxiety that folks felt as soon as the Dobbs decision came out. And I say that because I remember viscerally, I think a lot of us do, when we found out that Roe, which was 50 years of protection of a right, was overturned. And in Kansas, you know, we were the first state to vote on whether or not we want to keep politicians out of very personal decisions that should be between a person and their doctor and their family. And I think that people are right to still feel the same way, that that was a huge step backwards, and that we need to continue to protect our rights. And you know, I'm doing that by introducing. I know the president has an executive order. I'm introducing legislation to make sure that access to information and contraception is going to continue, because the pushback on that has been unrelenting.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the legislation you're going to bring. I know about for women's health care, including and contraceptives. What's it about, and what sort of hopes do you have that it could eventually become law?
Yeah, well, you know, when you've got a Supreme Court justice like Clarence Thomas calling into question not just the continued right for LGBTQ plus folks to get married, but also things like access to contraception, I think it is hugely important for those of us in the Congress to introduce pieces of legislation like the one I'm introducing that will protect access to family planning services, that will protect access to contraception, and make sure that people are not in fear of additional rights being taken away. And I actually do have hope for the future of not just protecting things like contraception and family planning, but also the full range of reproductive health care. When you see that many people across the country and in places like Kansas, that people do not want politicians making their private health care decisions for them, that, you know, I think that the right thing for all of us to do is to heed that and listen to what the people of our country are telling us.
So, Congresswoman, let's turn to the politics of it. We obviously are on the eve of an election. Polls, just including the one we just showed, show that the majority of Americans believe in some sort of abortion protections. You know, it was a significant motivator, the 2022 race, and helped Democrats. Do you anticipate the same next year? What sort of energy are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's actually surprising to me that we have folks who are on the other side of the aisle that continue to try to push some of these really just extreme positions. There's no other way to describe them. In fact, you know, in my district, where we resoundingly said, do not try to take away our rights, and I have two people who have filed against me that are wildly out of step with not just my district, but the entire country on these issues. And I think that, you know, the voters are going to continue to show up and make sure that we continue to push back on these extreme policies, just like we did last November.
Democratic Congresswoman Sharice Davids of Kansas, thank you so much for joining us this morning.